probably a good idea to start this video with answering the question of why am I actually making a video on this topic? And the reason is because I've joined recently some DMT and psychedelic groups on the internet, on Facebook and Reddit and so on. And what I see is a lot of people that seem to be quite lost in their experiences in psychedelics. And what a psychedelic means to them is having interesting and strange experiences that tend to be very profound at first, but as time goes on, these experiences just don't have real meaning to them. At least that's what it seems like to me. And they're just going down all kinds of different rabbit holes of strange, weird experiences. But psychedelics can offer you much, much, much more than that. And if you establish a connection with divinity, then you can systematically go deeper and deeper and deeper and find the true core of yourself. Not that I really want to be in a position of preaching to others. If you don't want to establish a connection with divinity and you just want to trip out at all times, then feel free to do so. I am not in a position to tell you what you should do. But if you want a more meaningful experience from your psychedelics, then establishing a connection with divinity is the perfect way to do so. And also, yet another reason is that once you start establishing a real relationship with a divine force of some kind, you can start having really deep, strong spiritual experiences, 100% sober. And that has definitely happened for me. We'll get to this in a bit later in the video. But it's very natural and very healthy to want to wean yourself off psychedelics as time goes on, because they do have their downsides, of course. It would be much more optimal and beautiful if you can live your life without needing psychedelics to access these intense, beautiful states. And that is a worthwhile thing to pursue as well. When I was just starting my psychedelic use, because of life situations, the best time I could find to do the psychedelic, which in this case was LSD, was at nighttime and meditate basically all night long, which isn't the most wise thing to do, but it's the best I could do at the time. And the setting was all right, but not the best, and I was going through some interesting things in life. So I was sort of, although I did have really interesting and nice experiences, also you could use the word tormented or annoyed by all sorts of strange energies. And when I closed my eyes, I would see unwanted visuals. Even snakes biting me would be a occurring thing. Or if I looked at the floorboards, there would be sort of goetic images coming out of them. And they're interesting because it's a reflection of what's going on deep in your mind. But this is sort of coming back to my initial metaphor that although a psychedelic can give you deep insights, there's this forest of icky, yucky energies that just get in your way of accessing these deeper states of consciousness. And what I eventually did, I can't remember, I'm not sure how I came across this, but I started staring at a sigil of Metatron, or it's commonly known as Metatron's cube. And to be honest, I really don't know much about the Metatron energy, apart from the fact that it's meant to be one of the most powerful archangels, a divine force, a force that tends to kill or destroy evil forces. And I didn't know anything about it really. I just knew what I just mentioned. And what I did is I stared at the sigil as these bad energies were sort of coming and going, and it was sort of becoming an unpleasant trip. And what happened, it was very interesting, is I went into this trance state where the sigil was almost imprinting deep into my mind somehow in an abstract way I can't explain. But it was almost like the sigil popped out of the page I was looking at, or out of the screen, and all I could see was the sigil. And the best way to describe it is a trance. The trance came over me. And after that experience, I don't know how long I was looking at it, maybe 20 minutes of a trance state. The amount of negative energies and negative visuals I saw dropped absolutely dramatically, and my visuals changed to be much more geometric. All sorts of circles filled my visual space. But my main takeaway from that was that such a simple exercise as staring at a Metatron's cube, knowing nothing at all about what's the force behind it, which is a bit risky, I suppose. Don't go staring at random sigils and expecting good things to happen. All sorts of things can happen, but if you stare at, the Metatron's cube or some angel's cube, a good sigil, then very positive things can happen in you, and it can release you from a lot of yucky energy. But that's just the first example of what happened to me, and was really only the start. What was much more a bigger effect in my life was sort of my next big experience of Divinity, which was also under the effects of LSD. And in this particular case, I was out with friends. We all took it, but then at some point, they were maybe not the best of friends. They went to someone's house. They went just back home to chill. But I was left on my own at nighttime again, in a car, not wanting to drive because I was under the effects of LSD. Driving is a terrible idea when you're under the effects of LSD. But anyway, I decided to meditate in my car. And again, there was sort of unwelcome feelings in my body, which is normal. But what I did is the practice of the 8 spiritual breaths, which I need to be careful not to oversell, because for me it's been the best thing I've ever discovered, the most powerful, beautiful, effective spiritual technique imaginable. But I guess other people's karma would be different, and they need to find their own spiritual practice that really resonates and works with them. But for me, this practice has really grown to be the most amazing, beautiful, divine, powerful thing possible. But anyway, I digress. I just said the first line of this practice, the first affirmation, which is, I now see a bright light above my head. And as soon as that happened, that was really the moment that I realized that all these spiritual techniques and mantras and etc., all these ancient spiritual traditions, they're not just random beliefs. They are extremely powerful, intricate forces and structures. What's going on is so complex and beautiful, because what happened at that time was just saying that one phrase of I now see a bright light above my head brought upon this fantastic state of consciousness. Instantly I saw a Merkaba just sort of blow out into my visual space. And you've got to remember, at this point I have been seeing hours and hours and hours and hours over many trips of all sorts of interesting visuals, and they are reflections of your inner mind. But then saying this one line, it is totally different from just some other visual that you're seeing. It's accompanied by an extremely powerful energy, and the amount of visual creativity that is associated with those visuals is extremely intricate and dynamic, and much, just very distinctly different from other visuals that you have. And to me, I feel like that experience, and then following subsequent experiences where I was on a psychedelic and really doing these affirmations of the 8 spiritual breaths, really established a very powerful, strong connection with divinity. And that's the main example that I have experienced and I'm very excited about. And these days, when I do the 8 spiritual breaths, it is 100% when I'm sober. It is 100% almost like a trip, in the sense of there's all sorts of visuals that are happening, all sorts of energy floods the body. You can feel the knots in the body being dissolved and the energy interacting with your energy in the body to relax and release and provide insights. And going back to the initial metaphor where there's a forest of karma within me, that energy comes in intelligently and helps dissolve and release it and retransform your body into something more beautiful that is in connection with a higher consciousness of love. So I hope that made some sort of sense. But then the last example I want to give was also on LSD at the start of my psychedelic journey. LSD was really the only psychedelic I could get my hands on. Although even at this time I was very focused on using it for evolutionary transformational purposes. So the intent was there. But anyway, me and my friend were in nature at this time, and at first the trip was a bit bad. It went quite south quickly because where we were, there are these quite big blood-sucking flies which land on you and bite you. It's like a mosquito times 100, and if you swat it, there's actually blood that goes everywhere. And anyway, these flies sort of attacked us while we were just out there sitting, waiting for the come up to happen, and flying around my head, and it was just escalating. But luckily my friend calmed me down and we went back to the car. And when we got back to the car, it was sort of like heaven. And my friend has the best taste of music possible. So this example is sort of divinity through music, which is very possible and very powerful. And definitely, if you're a musical person, a musically minded person, you could 100% find divinity in music. And, this was a while ago. I can't remember all the details of the trip. But as I listened to this beautiful classical Indian musical piece, the most beautiful visuals came up again. And the most beautiful story I could imagine was being told divinely through the music. Excuse me. But then right at the end of the song, it sort of culminated in this awareness that actually the true deep beauty was not the story being told. It was that there was an I, there was a consciousness witnessing the story. And as I just said that, I sort of got chills in my body, because when you realize that, to me, that's a very divine consciousness, a very divine spirit. The self-realization that there is an I, something, you are here seeing a story is absolutely amazing. And immediately after that, this very divine energy came upon me, and I just heard this vibrational, powerful energy accompanied by the word Shiva. But it was a bit different than just the word Shiva, because the sh, the the v, the a was all combined into one with this sort of vibrational quality, just Shiva. And again, it was very powerful. At this point, I was crying, sobbing. It was so beautiful. This might have been one of the most powerful singular releases of karma from my body at one time. And at this point, I knew that Shiva existed. I'd heard about him before, but I was definitely not a student or a follower of the Hindu tradition. I wasn't a Shaivite. But just that one experience makes it so apparent that these people worshipping Shiva are not idiots. Maybe some of them are just, blindly following the traditions and beliefs of their parents. I'm sure many people are doing that, maybe most. But at least they are getting the seeds of wisdom planted within them. And when you have a spiritual experience like that regarding Shiva, you can really just see how powerful the techniques are, how powerful that spiritual tradition is. And I'm sure what I was touching on was just the tip of the iceberg. And since that day, I've had a very to me, a very deep, profound connection with the Hindu god Shiva. And it's just like you understand what is being said when anyone talks about Shiva at a much deeper level than I ever did in the past. Again, maybe for you, for other people, they might have a different Hindu god or some other force like Christ or the Buddha that they encounter. And I'm not here to tell you that go looking for Shiva, but I'm telling you to go look for the divinity that resonates with you. So yeah, those are the 3 experiences that I wanted to share to maybe start this video off, kick it off with a bit of personalizing it to my life story. But now let's move on to the more generic topics of how you can establish a connection with divinity, because the point isn't for you to copy me, it's to find your own connection with divinity, your own relationship with it. And at this point, usually you say this at the end, I want to invite you, if you have already had some sort of divine experience, even if it's not on psychedelics, it doesn't matter, please share in the comments below, because I would love to read about it and have that story imprinted on me, that seed maybe of divinity planted. And if you are looking to establish a connection with divinity yourself, then that's what the rest of this video is for. But also go look through the comments, see what other people had said, and anything that you don't resonate with, just cast it away. It doesn't really matter. But if you resonate with a certain story that I have said or someone else says in the comments, then just stick with it, absorb it, think about it for a few days, and then just think about it during your next trip, and you could be amazed at how quickly that seed sprouts into something really unimaginably beautiful. Let us now look at what exactly divinity is, so that we can properly distinguish between it and other energies. The main consistent feature of divinity is that it is unconditionally loving and embracing. A divine force will never judge you for any wrongdoings that you have committed, like a cartoon version of God might. Instead, it is exactly the opposite, and when you reflect on all the wrongdoings that you have done in your life, you're likely to be brought to tears at how much divine love still accepts you exactly as you are. Divinity is extremely beautiful, but even more so, it is extremely resonant with truth. Divinity is very closely associated with energies in your head, above your head, and in your heart. So you can expect anything that comes from these regions to be very likely a force of divinity. Divinity can 100% take form, but it is very likely to be very geometric in nature and have a central point from which it emanates. This point can be thought of as being God itself, because divinity is, by definition, a force that is close to God instead of one that is far away, entangled, and lost from its true source. Just because something you witness on psychedelics looks beautiful does not mean it is actually divinity. The test that you should use is always to check, is this force unconditionally loving and accepting and moving me towards source consciousness and towards truth? So now that we have a very basic, high-level understanding of recognizing divinity when we see it, we need to address the question of what your attitude should be towards the divine. So I ended the previous segments by saying that a divine force will love you unconditionally, which is true, but that does not mean that the divine will engage with someone and have a long-lasting relationship of healing with someone who, first of all, has no intention of cooperating and just has the intention of living life as they were. You need to have the intention of changing for the better, and the divine generally does not work with people who have a lot of selfish intentions and who are not willing to let go of that. At some point you need to become much more selfless. And in terms of beliefs, if you go to a divine force, there is this classic metaphor really within the Buddhist tradition. If you visit a monk living in a remote hill in a monastery, the monk might pour you a cup of tea, and he will do so until your cup is actually overflowing and you ask the monk, please stop pouring me some tea, my cup is full. Then the monk will tell you that your mind is like the cup. First you need to empty your mind before new blessings and teachings can be given to you. And another deeper, more subtle meaning to the story is the fact that the monk lives in a remote monastery. So because of the divine nature of the monk, he is very, very happy to be in service to you and to help you if you're being cooperative and are putting in some effort. But the monk he's not desperate and craving to help uncooperative people. So here, if you want the monk's help and get the value he has to offer, you need to journey to his home, put in the effort, and do your part of the transformation. So I think the key here, the key word to working with the divine forces, especially on a psychedelic, is humility. Because if you accept the fact that divinity has a lot to provide you, then it is natural that you become a humble student, that you empty yourself of your beliefs, your intentions, your goals in life just for the time being, and be humble in the fact that you do not actually know how to be happy all the time, and you do not really deeply, truly know who you are. That's why you're taking psychedelics and why you're thinking of working with the divine. So if you approach Divinity as an authentic student who wants to learn from a teacher, and by all means have skepticism and ask questions, because that's how you integrate what is being taught to you. Intellectual honesty is very, very valued by Divinity. If you do that, then the divine will no doubt hold your hand very lovingly and show you exactly what you need to know for that time in your life. And then you can inhale the teachings, integrate them into your daily life, keep doing that, repeat that, one lesson at a time, and then you are already well underway to dissolving that metaphorical karmic forest that is separating you from your deeper, blissful self. One of the easiest and immediate ways that you can really taste a strong sense of what Divinity is and really feel its energy in your body is by listening to some divinely inspired music. And I've asked some of my friends who have the absolute best, exquisite taste in divine music to help me create a very lovely playlist for you, which you can find in the description below. Another easy way to get instant and powerful results is through the use of a mantra, which I'm generally using here to mean a holy, powerful word of some sort. I will post in the description below some resources where you can listen to and learn some mantras. And during your trip on a psychedelic, listening is fine, and it is even better if you can say it yourself, even just in your head, but make very sure to pay careful attention to the correct pronunciation, as it does have a big impact on the effect of the mantra. The original mantra of Om, found in all spiritual traditions, is said to connect you back with Source itself, and you are very welcome to experiment with this. My general recommendation would be to use a mantra involving the word Shiva, because it is very direct, clear-cut and to the point, with very little chance of delusion happening of some kind. Finally, if you have a religious background, because you have so much background experience with the religion, your eyes can really open up to the beauties and divinity within that belief system by reciting some important words within the religion. For instance, for Christianity, the word Jesus Christ. But you can apply this to any religion that you have spent a lot of time interacting with. For the third really easy way to connect to Divinity, you need to go no further than YouTube, because on YouTube there are many enlightened masters who give out their teachings for free, and by listening to them talk, especially on a topic which you really resonate with or find important, you can open your own internal energies to vibrate at their divine level. And really, if you're on a psychedelic listening to a beautiful speech of an enlightened master, I would be surprised if you do not have an intensely spiritual, divine, mind-blowing experience. I will link in the description below some of my favorite teachers, but I encourage you to go out and find a reputable, responsible and grounded enlightened master that you really resonate with and that you can stick with even after your trip, so that you can pursue your spiritual evolution even further. Although there are many other ways to contact Divinity, those are the 3 ways I would recommend for you to get started, because they are easy to do and very clear cut, and yeah, anyone can do it. If you do though, however, yourself have an intuitive idea or a spark of something different that you want to try, that you feel resonates with Divinity, then by all means pursue that, and please share the results in the comments, because it could inspire others to follow a similar idea. But I want to end this video now by saying that the ideas mentioned are intended to provide an initial introduction to divine energy into your body and into your life. And if you do succeed in this initial connection, then I highly recommend you grasp the opportunity with both hands And for a phase of your life, really get into it, dive into it head first, and don't just stop at the initial experience and think that you've finished the journey. If you have an initial experience, that's the start of a beautiful thing. And keep engaging with the experiences when sober, and reflect on your experiences, and make contact with Divinity again after you've integrated your first experience. Then make contact again on a psychedelic, and explore other forms of Divinity across all the world's mystical traditions. That's what I recommend anyway, because there's a lot of beauty to be had in this sphere of Divinity. There's many, many facets to it. And if you can open yourself up like an energy channel, like a hollow bamboo rod, to the divine forces through your experiences, then over time the Divinity will be available to you at all times in sober life, just whenever you're still, or even when you're moving, even at work, in family situations. When you're enjoying life at the beach, it will be there to make everything more beautiful. Or when you're really struggling in life because of a challenge, it will be there to give you strength and to give you good wisdom and focus and clarity of what is the correct action to take. And as I mentioned in the metaphor at the beginning, this journey can take you all the way to a complete dissolution of your karmic forest of energy stored within you, so that you can reach utter and absolute freedom and liberation into bliss, nirvana, and moksha, also known as enlightenment.